hi again, everybody. Welcome back to Sports Talk, our special Kentucky Derby edition of the show. Doug Miles along with Don Henderson and, of course, our old friend Pete the Prophet joining us by telephone from up in New York, down up in New Jersey right now. I'm here in Sarasota, Florida. And, gentlemen, always good to get together this time of year, although it's been kind of a tumultuous week so far leading up to the Derby. Already the favorite is scratched, perhaps another horse to be scratched Friday. I'm not sure if that's going to be announced yet, but that's a possibility, and a lot of things going on in the world of horse racing.
There is a lot going on in the world of horse racing, and overall, most of it getting scratched out of the Derby. We have the Islanders beating Pittsburgh in 4 and then about to get swept. We get Tampa Bay going out. Cats and dogs living in harmony. What's going on over here? I don't know what's happening. I can't figure it out.
Well, they're trying to build that new Coliseum so that the Islanders can go over there, and they had a wonderful dedication with the shovel outside of Belmont Park. How much have they got built, Pete?
Let me see. Let me take a look. I think there is a rope. I think there's a rope around an area where they're going to build an Escalade. I think I saw a rope. And other than that, there's nothing there. It's all kind of ceremonial at the moment. Nothing
What's it been, about 2 years now since they had that wonderful, wonderful ceremony and was in the Post, and everybody had a big story about it on the news 2 years ago?
I think it's about a year and a half, and I think since then, all there's been is studies and the towns in the area fighting it, and they know it's inevitable, but they're all looking for the extra little handout, the extra something that they would get, from this sweetheart deal, and they keep trying, and then they're still talking about the Long Island Railroad, but yet there was a new thing that came up where it looked like it was going to be stopped again, and they still don't even know the date. They don't really know what they're going to do with the Belmont meet after this. Are they definitely coming back to Belmont after this, or are they going to go right to Aqueduct? They haven't made that decision. So it's been a long time, and I can't believe how long it's taking, and it's supposed to be built in 2 years, which seems incredibly fast.
Well, we were talking about this at least 2 years ago on the Derby preview, Pete, so maybe longer than that. And I know our friend Jeffrey Payne, who is involved with the Islanders, he was talking about it even maybe before that. So it's been a long time, and they still haven't...
I didn't know if it was official, though. I don't know if it was ever... I think that was always kind of the rumor. I mean, there have been so many rumors over the past 10 years. There's been so many rumors that... And then finally, it just kind of happened. It doesn't feel like it's 2 years since it's been official, but you know what? Maybe it is. All this stuff always takes so long. If anyone remembers when Aqueduct, when after 9/11, they were going to build the casino at Aqueduct, and that was going to be immediate, and that took 9 years? They had someone else come in, and then they dropped out, and then Resorts came in and took it over, and so, but that took 9 years by the time that whole thing ended up being opened up. So you never know. Bureaucracy here, that and the NYRA is a lethal combination.
Well, Pete, this is the Derby weekend. Each year we do a little preview on the Derby, and a couple of things. First of all, my own observation. I've never seen less publicity for the Derby than I've seen this year. I just don't understand how all of a sudden it has fallen down and almost non-existent. And the other thing is that I don't know the degree. You probably do. It's a breathing problem of the favorite, which she had to pull yesterday. They scratched yesterday late in the afternoon. Maybe you could detail both of those things for us.
Well, first of all, the breathing problem, which is actually fairly common in horses.
That is not unusual then. This epiglottis blockage, is that what they call it?
Yeah, no, it's not. It literally what happens is it actually it's like a lazy sort of thing where it falls over the breathing, and then it causes them problems. Now I'm not sure. I didn't quite understand it, as if they didn't know he already had it. So
it's not a LASIK problem.
No, definitely not a LASIK problem. It's actually a physical thing that happens to horses. They get an operation. It's really nothing, and then they're fine. This is going to be nothing. This is going to be 3 weeks. basically, and it'll be fine, and then it'll be back, training again. So it's not going to be a big deal, but that is something that happens to horses. And I tell you,
I don't mean to interrupt you, people. Is this something that kind of pops up all of a sudden, or how come they didn't notice this, a month ago?
they usually do know. What it ends up happening, I think, because the horse is. They always find it after a bad race is when they find it, because that's the reason the jockey will come back and say he was gagging or he was making funny sounds, and then he automatically stops the horse and they find this problem. This one is he won his first race ever in February, so it's not like he's won a lot of races, but he just won the Oaklawn race, and so they didn't know anything. I don't know if it was after a workout or whatever it was that they finally figured it out. But it does just sort of appear out of the blue sometimes.
And there's a possibility we're going to have another dropout too, which would cut it back to 18 as opposed to 20. But at the same time, give us a little bit of an overview of the 18 that we'll be running, because how are they going to come up with some odds on these horses?
Well, first, actually, I didn't answer your first part of your question, Don, which was the racing. It seems, yeah, right, exactly. Always leading me the wrong way, Doug. I think that a big part of it has always been part of the breeding, but also, and I think we talked about this similarly last year, that the horses don't, they're just not built the way they used to be. We talked about how they would run, 10, 11 races before the Derby in a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old campaign. And now, look at all these horses. There are 3 or 4 at least that have only run 4 races lifetime. And if you look at the Beyer numbers, which is sort of a standard look at how good horses are, Beyer even said it in an article recently. He goes, there's 3 horses there's 3 100 Beyer ratings, 3 races that have been run with 100 or more Beyer ratings. 2 of them are by the same horse, Maximum Security. Now in the old days, back when, it would be 115 number, 120 number, even the last 2 Kentucky Derby winners, only like 105, 103. So the horses just are not as good, and it's a big deal with that. But going into this race, it's just not that popular either, because no one knows anybody here. No one has, when Seattle Slew ran, when Alligar ran a firm, you knew of them as 2-year-olds. You picked them up, and then they ran as a 3-year-old campaign. These horses are literally running. They're starting at 3. They're just starting to get going. There's no hype behind them. There's no anything. The only horse that you can even maybe get around a little bit was last year's winner of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, game winner, but then he ran 2 seconds this year, so it's just not that big of a deal anymore. And what's
the reason for that? Why aren't they running these horses a little bit more as 2 or 3? So you would have a chart.
It's such a different mentality now, how they take months in between races. They just don't believe in it. And now that what's happened the last couple of years with the lightly raced horses winning the Triple Crown, now they're even more so. I've never seen so many horses with this lightly raced. And that's why the Derby, which used to be the best horse, used to say, this is the best horse in the race, because they were seasoned. Now it's who's improving into the race, so it makes it a great betting race. But it's just the trainers all take different tacks, and it's just totally run differently. The whole game has changed overall, and now it's got into the really big races like this. So that's really what's been going on.
Just back to Don's point, the lack of coverage or finding something about it. I mean, you and I and Don, we all we scour the internet for sports pretty much every day. But even if you do that, you got to dig to find some information leading up to this week. I looked for the Wood Memorial used to be a big race. You didn't hear much about that. Some of the Florida races that took place in February and March, you didn't hear a lot about that unless you really dig for it. It seems like nowadays the Derby's almost crops up on you, and by the time you get into it, it's over.
be a blurb about a particular race, and that would be it. And now, like, you don't hear anything about this stuff. And even when the horse scratched, that wasn't
the top story of the
gigantic
day.
news. Yeah, it wasn't. Eventually you found out, but it wasn't like it would have been back then. And this was the favorite, basically, scratching, and you didn't really hear anything about it. And it's kind of sad. I mean, it always makes you feel old when you say like the good old days. But I really do miss the days when there was a path to the Triple Crown. There was a path to the Derby, and you knew the horses' names. And even people who didn't know much about horse racing knew horses' names because you see them. And like you said, Doug, you don't find anything anymore. And even the TV coverage, very small. They don't. There's nothing quite behind it anymore, and it makes it for a rather dull. It's just like one event, and that's it. Just the Derby, and then that's basically it. There's nothing really before, and only recently has there been something afterwards because of the Triple Crown.
No juice.
None, no juice at all. This race is just a complete betting race. I mean, I really wanted Omaha Beach to run because I did not like the horse whatsoever, and I was looking forward to him to run. I thought he was going to go down in a heap. I was very surprised Mike Smith chose him, and so now I guess Mike Smith at the moment anyway is without a mount.
What happened
and everyone else.
I mean, he of course worked for Bob Baffert for a long time. Did he just think that horse was going to be better, and he didn't want to stay with Baffert in this race, or did they have a falling out, or what happened? I didn't hear anything about it.
No, there was no falling out at all. He had the choice, and he went. He went here, which was a little surprising. I thought that was kind of a strange choice by him to go take it, and he's been. I don't know right now if there'd be any chance someone would take off their jockey and put him on. I mean, it's very hard to believe Mike Smith will not be in this race. But this is all, when a horse wins, and then another horse wins, and then they're riding both horses. All these people want sort of a commitment, and it's so hard for them to kind of jockey around for position. So it's a rider's game, and they get to choose who they want. I was surprised that Mike chose him actually. So that was kind of surprising.
You were saying Omaha Beach, you were hoping it would run because you didn't have any interest in it whatsoever. What would be your number one or number two picks going into this Kentucky Derby?
Well, I'm a very big fan. I'm a big fan of one horse in particular, but then I'll give you the negative, and that's the Breeders' Cup Juvenile winner from last year, and the race was won at Churchill Downs, and that's Game Winner. And Game Winner crushed the field last year. He's run 2 races this year. Very, very tough trips. Very wide trips. Lost to Roadster in the Santa Anita race, which is by a nose. And the Roadster...
What post position?
Today? I mean, Roadster has posts. Well, it was 17.
17, yeah.
So now I guess it'll be probably 15 if they draw in someone else.
Okay.
So that's not great for him because he's had 2 wide trips lately. Has also had a big problem lugging in. So that could be a problem. I'm hoping he likes Churchill Downs. He is absolutely to me the fastest horse in the race. He's had the 2 toughest trips. He should not have lost either one of the races this year. And I really, really like him. The other one is the Bill Mott horse, Tacitus, who, blue blood sort of breeding, top point getter in the only 4 races, crushed at the start of the Wood Memorial. I don't know if anybody happened to see that race. Probably not, because it was, no one that watches the race. But horse from the far outside, the jockey that rode that horse, escapes me right now, and post, I think, 11 or 12, cut off the whole field, caused a vicious chain reaction. I think he ended up might have got a month suspension for the ride. Oh yeah, a very heavy suspension. It was reckless. And Tacitus, this horse, got badly bumped around and checked, but still ran the big race, a good final eighth of a mile. Also coming into it, only 4 races, improving in numbers. So those are the two. No big odds in particular, but those are the two that I give a that I really like. But I'm a big fan of Game Winner.
Pete the Prophet joining us on our Derby preview special tonight, and we had to talk, Pete, about the story. I think the New York Times, Joe Drape, we had on the show a couple of times in the past. He's written great books on horse racing. Wrote a big article about what's going on at Santa Anita. I know you and I have talked about it a little bit on the phone, Pete. 23 horses, I believe, is the count at this point that have died in really the last several months. They opened it after they were closed for a while. They thought they fixed the problem. Then a couple more horses died. What's the latest on that?
Well, I don't want to. Sometimes these things, this happened when Aqueduct in the winter, when Aqueduct raced in the winter, I'm going to say about 5 years or so ago, they ended up taking a little bit of cheaper horses, and they did some things where they ended up running the horses too often, and a bunch broke down. And then the governor actually came in and they changed everything because of that. Sometimes though, it's just a fluke, and it wasn't. And I don't know. I mean, the fact that they tore apart that track and horses broke down in workouts and on a turf course also, and so it wasn't just in racing that you just don't know why it happened. But sometimes these things are anomalies, and I don't like the fact. I think they I know they overreacted with the no LASIK. They overreacted with the no whip. All this stuff is just over the top. And listen, if you guys remember, not long ago, they overreacted when the horse broke down in the Derby. I think it finished second in the Derby. It might have been the filly. And then all of a sudden, all these tracks changed to synthetic tracks because they said, well, synthetic tracks are better. There's less injury.
Pete, let me interrupt for just a second. You and Doug are going to have to finish the show because I have something I have to get hold of over here. So you two guys finish the show, and I'll catch up with you after the Derby. Thank you very much, Pete.
Take care of yourself, Don.
We'll say hello to him during the Preakness time. But Pete, go ahead. You were talking about Santa Anita. Again, I was going to ask you, is it just one of those things that happens? I mean, it seems like a high number for that. Is it the track conditions or in synthetic track?
I think it's one of those things that happened, but I also think that, and it's hard not to correlate the fact that the rain that they got there was historic. You got 20 some odd inches of rain, I think, in that month. Now, even though they tore up the track and they looked it over and stuff like that, I mean, there's probably something to do with that. But the answers that they give. Now, the answer they're giving with the whip, now they're gonna do no whip, and I think that's dangerous. I don't like whipping of horses either, and I think there should be clear rules on the whipping of horses. But they need it for their own protection, and if a horse is legging out and for signals, they definitely need that. And now the fact that they have a whip that now is much easier on the horse.
It's almost like
yeah. And getting rave reviews from the jockeys, and so that's very important. And I was telling the story of when they went to the synthetic tracks years ago. They didn't have much to choose from. There wasn't a big sample size of horses injured, and they said, well, there's not a lot of horses injured on synthetic tracks. Well, there weren't that many tracks. And so now they ended up building all these tracks with synthetic tracks, and then different injuries happened. It wasn't, they would say a lot of hind injuries happened because of the surface. So, and it didn't change at all. The amount of horses still broke down at the same level. It was because now we had a bigger sample size. So sometimes they just jump to conclusions to the point of almost no return. And I mean, Doug, you know this. For the racing, we're talking about the Derby, and no one's talking about the Derby. No one. But that people, you of all people, got in touch with me. My friend of mine who knows nothing about horse racing except when we go up to Saratoga comes up and he goes, "What's going on in Santa Anita?" It's like, wow, when people like that are hearing it, when it makes national news, when it makes Channel 2 up here in New York, when it's on the Sunday morning show, wow, that is a big deal.
Anytime animals are hurt or dying, it gets a lot of people interested. For good or bad. I mean, you don't want the animals to do that, but then again, people are getting interested in this story that know nothing about the sport. So that's why we want to find out: is it an anomaly, or is it just something wrong with the track? But it seems from everybody I've heard other shows, people talking about it. Nick Zito was on with Mad Dog today. He said it's, he doesn't exactly know why, but it could be like what you said, just one of those unlucky, unfortunate things.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, it happens. I mean, there's more breakdowns at tracks that have less, cheaper horses.
Right.
This is not Santa Anita at all. But I have a feeling the rain probably has something to do with it. And even if you look at the track and tear it up, there's probably something going on underneath that you just can't quite tell. I mean, it was historic rain, and that, I think, probably contributed in some way. But a lot of times, it's also just luck of the draw. It didn't happen in races. It happened in workouts too. So there was a fairly equal amount. And of course, after they tear up the track and they say it's good for racing, they come back and another horse breaks down, working out. So, but I think that problem is solved. It really has no issues since, and it's good to bring attention to safety, for sure. But sometimes just the exaggeration is way over the top.
Yeah, well, they've already gotten rid of not putting it analogy to dog racing and horse racing, but they have gotten rid of that down here in Florida primarily because of the animal rights folks. Even though the sport is dying,
exactly.
But people still went. It's not like it's completely done, but they ended it primarily because of the reason of animal lovers. So I'm not knocking it, but that's why it ended. So if that happens,
it definitely is why it ended.
Yeah.
But what happened with that was that there was a dying sport down in the
It was
last
dying
run,
anyway.
and
Yeah,
then
I mean, it's
right.
pretty much done as far as big spectator. But people were still going. It wasn't like the tracks couldn't stay open still, but they voted on it, and that's what happened. That's why dog racing ends this year.
Some people ask me, is it going to happen to horse racing? The answer is no, not even a chance. There's too much money. I mean, it's just, and then as they said, what do you do with all the horses? I mean, there's a lot of horses out there. Where are they going?
Right.
So that's another big part of this this take on all this stuff. So
They don't have for glue anymore either, so you got to put them somewhere.
no, you don't do any of that stuff anymore. No, none of that stuff going on. So.
Well, let's move on from horse racing and kind of wrap up. We always talk a little hockey with our friend Pete the Prophet, and you and I have been following our local team we grew up with, even though you and I are more Ranger fans, but we always follow the Islanders. But, boy, they had a tough one last night as we do the show now. Not a shot on goal in the last 10 minutes of the game I saw. I didn't see any shots on goal for the Islanders. Boy, those Canes are tough.
They are tough, boy, and isn't it interesting how the NHL now has ended up becoming more about the hot team and not about the team that rolls over or does. Obviously, Washington last year was good all year, but there's always a team that gets hot. And St. Louis, one of those teams right now. Carolina, absolutely, and at home they have a phenomenal record, getting unbelievable goaltending. And then, as an Islander fan, you think, okay, there's a crack. The goalie's out, and this guy ends up being almost just as big, and the Islanders just don't seem to be playing with the same crispness. Now, you and I have talked about this privately. The Islanders have always had one gigantic problem, and they don't have any scoring.
Right.
They have, I mean, no matter what you say about the Tavares deal, and I thought that, for Clark Gillies to come out and say that what Tavares did was wrong in the sense of that if he knew he wasn't going to come back, or there was a chance he wasn't going to come back, he should have asked to be traded. So then the Islanders could have got something. Now, if Tavares is on this team, we have a whole different issue going on here. The Islanders have no scoring. It is completely a put this puck to the net, deflections, banging in front, Anders Lee in front, banging it home. Barzal is a massive talent. but the kid does not shoot. I mean, I cannot. You were watching that game yesterday. It couldn't have been any more frustrating what happened there. And even in the overtime loss, I think it was Clutterbuck had a clear shot, and he throws a pass back to point, and then they end up coming down, and after a shot and a miss, and then they ended up scoring. So Carolina is just playing some hard-nosed hockey. I mean, again, look at this series. Other than yesterday with the open net goals, they're all one-goal games. They can go either way. How many posts did the Islanders hit in game 2? And then yesterday, Carolina hit a bunch. And I wanted to ask you that as a ex-goalie, and I actually like the color commentator, what he said. You really can't blame him for that play, the goalie, because he did put it up in the air. He put it high. It was just a great play by the guy. What do you think about that play? Was that a gas?
Yeah, when he threw the puck around the net, we're talking about behind the net, the goalie tried to clear it out, and I didn't notice how high it was until you saw the replay. And, yeah, you can't blame the goalie for that. If you want to say he shouldn't roam out of his net, but goalies do that now in that little hexagonal thing, whatever, behind the goal, and try and clear the puck or get it up ice. So, no, you can't blame him for that. But the guy who made a great play, knocking it down and then put it in front, and it was a good shot to get it in the goal. It was over the shoulder, wasn't it?
Over his shoulder, and you can even blame.
Like the goalie was something. He really
no. He got right back in there, and he was in the spot, and that didn't cause it. And listen, there were two Islanders right there. One that was right that could have clamped down on the stick, and
no, you can't blame him for that. Goals are such a premium in the playoffs. You knew at that point that was probably it.
Oh, yeah, that was probably. And the Islanders started pressing, and then we had the 2-on-1 breaks, and then you just knew that it wasn't gonna end well at that. I'm just very surprised that there's a very good chance it could be a sweep. I mean, here on the island, when they beat Pittsburgh, everybody, especially Ranger fans, would say, "Oh my God, you guys are going to the finals." And I'm like, take it easy.
1975 all over again. Remember? They were down 3-0 to Pittsburgh, and that came back, tied it, won it in 7, down 3-0 to the Flyers, almost did it again, and then Kate Smith came out and sang, and that was it.
And then that was it, and then it ended right there. I don't think we're getting any of that.
Now Kate Smith is gone. Some song she sang 80 years ago.
That's right.
Kate's looking down from heaven saying, what are you talking about? That wasn't a racist song. It was like a song on a Broadway show. But no, not climate.
So now I can't even, I mean, that was always fun in Philadelphia, that if they show a replay, sometimes they'd have someone singing it, and then they sing along with Kate Smith, and now that's it. You'll never see that again.
The statue is down, or at least it's covered up. That's it. Poor old Kate.
Is the statue down?
Well, they covered it up, and they said they were going to remove it. So they showed a picture of it. It was covered up. Yeah.
Oh, you're killing me. You're killing me.
Well, we won't get into that. It's another show. But, and again, before, we got to give some credit to another guy down here that at least I got to see quite a bit when he coached the Lightning, John Tortorella. Boy, I thought that guy's career was done after he left the Rangers, then went to Vancouver, and then really burned out in about half a season there. They got rid of him, and kind of in purgatory in Columbus. But, boy, he's done a great job.
Boy, listen, he's a genius, and you buy into what he has, and he's got a. He's a winner. You can't say anything about that, and how these coaches can go and turn around a franchise and turn around a city in this case, and they're fun to watch, and they are playing for him, and I love good coaching stories. I love Berube, coming in and turning around St. Louis. It's amazing how that happens. It's so much fun to watch those turnarounds and these teams get hot at the right time.
And in the West, like you said, St. Louis, I'd like to see them. They've never won the Cup. They've been in the first couple of years they were in existence. They were in the finals with Scotty Bowman, but Montreal beat them. But I'd like to see them make it in the West. And, the Islanders can make a great comeback, great. But if not, I'd like to see the Blue Jackets. Something different in the East.
Oh, I would love to see me too, Doug. I would love to see something a little bit on the different side, if possible. That would be that would be great. And as long as, and it better held this way, Doug, As long as Doc is calling the finals. Because if Doc's not calling the finals, I don't have much to say.
Not worth watching. Nope, you're right. People should enjoy Doc Emmerich. Like the last few years of Vince Scully, people were finding ways to listen to him do the Dodger games, whatever they could do, and I think you got to do it with Doc Emmerich. I mean, I think he's in his 70s now, so he's not going to be doing it for that much longer. But boy, he's still on the top of his game.
What do you think? Does I guess Doc chooses the game, or NBC chooses which game he'll go to? I mean, I don't know if I was surprised he took the
East Coast games and the Northeast teams, it seems, until the finals, obviously.
Yeah.
But, they give him, though I think he lives in Detroit, so I don't know if that has anything to do with where he goes, but I think they always give him the East Coast and Northeast teams in the playoffs.
I think we talked about this last year. The first round you get to hear the home announcers, and the Islander guy I think is fabulous. I'm very happy with him calling games. And then after that, you get the national people, and I really have no juice on anybody. And the people that did last night's game for the Islanders, it's such a big part of watching a game for me is the color and the play-by-play, and it just didn't give me the juice. Maybe I'm spoiled by Doc.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, and you and I were chatting on the text for a little bit. Nothing against the two women. I think there's two that do the color on hockey, but they got it's a three-person booth, and she, particular, the two women that I've heard doing it, not against women out there, but they just have to say something to justify their job, and it's just way too much. It's killing the play-by-play. In hockey, you shouldn't talk until there's a stoppage in play, but they're talking right in the middle of the play.
Yeah, they're talking over each other. They're sort of saying, and sometimes they're just not bringing anything really interesting. It's very similar to the sideline reporters on football when they. I just talked to the coach, and Coach Gibbs says they just got to play better defense. I'm like, oh, thanks. I mean, I'm glad you got that interview. And she just says she just has too much to say, and a lot of times she doesn't let it flow, and that's a big part to color people, how to let it flow and bring something to the game that you don't know. Like a guy like Tony Romo, who brings something to the game that you just wouldn't know otherwise. McCarver back in the day, those guys.
Yeah, and you can tell that they're reading it. I mean, it's a fact that they, research whatever they say, and they throw it in there whether it means anything at the moment or not. But that's not going to change, so that's the way they do it now. But it's way too much. Not like the old days of Tim Ryan and remember who did that with him? Ted Lindsay. Remember that? In the old Game of the Week, and of course Marv did it with the Rangers on radio for you. You had the one play-by-play guy. Of course, New York. We saw Jim Gordon and the big whistle. You got used to those guys, the way they did a game. But no longer that way. Look, Kenny Albert's not bad, but he has to work with the three-person booth, and he was really being overshadowed the other day in the game he did.
Kenny Albert's he's good. I think he's probably the next best.
Very good.
Out of that.
I don't think he's
quite
as good as his dad, but that's just us. We grew up with his dad, but he's good. Yeah, Gary Thorne, who hasn't done it unfortunately because he does baseball now, but he's one of the best.
He was one of my favorites of all time to listen to that guy call games. So that was. But what do we have tonight? A little Boston action tonight. Is that what we have?
Boston and Columbus. So we'll see if Columbus can keep it going there. I kind of think Boston's going to make it into a 7-gamer, but I'd like to see Columbus do it. It'll be fun.
I would too, but Boston's too tough to just go down here 3-1. I think so.
Well, that'll wrap it up for our Derby preview. Pete, we'll do one for the Preakness in a couple of weeks, obviously, and again, kind of wide open, as you said. So you really can't point to any one horse. Just kind of throw a dartboard to kind of pick for Saturday, right? I mean, really nobody. You're not going to go wrong either way.
Really it. Yeah. No, I don't think so. My Bud Longshot horse is a horse called By My Standards, who looks like he's improving. Won the Louisiana Derby at a pretty good time and had a really good final 8th of the mile. But I think Game Winner is going to be too much to beat in that race.
For Don Henderson and Pete the Prophet, thank you for watching. We'll see you again for our Preakness preview in a couple of weeks.
Thanks, Doug.